Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but also the Locked On Giants podcast as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day for Tuesday, February 18th. As always, depending on who you listen to, I am your host with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter /X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. Check out my baseball-related work also at justbaseball.com. And my co-host today, especially you Giants fans, you know him. He's the B with the K. He loves to have it his way. You know, it is Ben Kaspick, host of Locked On Giants. It has been a while, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm really glad spring training is here. It in many ways was a long winter, but also I can't believe that it's already here, So
Yeah.
How are you? It has been so long. I don't know when the last time we talked about
man.
forever.
It's been a really, really long time. And it's been a pretty eventful offseason in its own way. I think that the NL West, as always, is the only division in baseball that tries, as we both know. But it's been a while. I feel like the last time we talked was probably like prior to the trade deadline. Honestly, the trade deadline was very, very weird. And I would like to ask you about that. And we're going to start off with that. We're just going to be talking today, folks, about just the state of the NL West, both Padres and Giants, the moves that they both have made this offseason, just where they both stand, because I think that the Dodgers and the D-backs, in my opinion, have been the teams that have led the headlines this offseason. Padres are they're a little bit of the headlines, but it's almost always because of the lack of what they've done, sans Nick Pivetta last week. So we're going to be talking about that. But I also want to talk about just new look Giants. And I don't mean necessarily in terms of players too, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but Farhan Zaidi out, Buster Posey in. What the heck? I mean, guys, the NL West is really everyone always talks about the AL East. Oh, the Yankees and the Red Sox, or the NL East. Oh, the Braves and the Phillies and the Mets. Nah, man, NL West is where it's at. There's always something weird, except for the Rockies, where something's going on. And even frankly, the Rockies are entertaining in their own very idiosyncratic way, to put it nicely. But can you talk about, I guess, just what it's been like? Because for me, I think that the Zaidi thing was, I feel like everybody could kind of see it coming, because this is a team that not only has not had many winning seasons over the last decade or so, with the exception of the Voodoo Magic 2021 team, but also has been, a little bit of a problem with the farm system, has been a problem with missing out on some free agents when they signed in some cases of Carlos Correa. What has that been like? Because from afar, I was like, yeah, man, I thought that they missed in some ways at the trade deadline last year, especially.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the players felt the same way, and that definitely contributes to what was. By the end of the season, I thought the writing was on the wall, and that it was going to be the end of Farhan Zaidi's time here, because it was very evident that 2021 was the outlier season, because 3 seasons happened since then, and all 3 were right around the same, in that they were either 500 or a game or 2 below. They won 79, 80, and 81 games in the 3 seasons after the 107 win season. So, and that's really frustrating to watch. And then there was player dissatisfaction. The manager, Gabe Kapler, that was the first manager picked by Farhan Zaidi, got fired along the way at the end of the previous season. Mm-hmm. And there was also grumbling, like some disgruntled comments coming out of the clubhouse towards the end of the previous season. So I fully expected Farhan Zaidi was going to get fired by the time the 2024 season was coming to a close, and the Giants were not going to make the playoffs again. But the shocker was in that same press release when they announced that they had fired him, that they had hired Buster Posey to be to just take on the top front office job, mm-hmm. with no previous front office experience. None.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where to start there. I was shocked when that happened. And frankly, I think it's been under-discussed in that regard. And of course, before we started recording, I still would like to throw it out there. I said this years ago when it came to the Dodgers and when they traded for Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. I stand by it that Mike Zimmerman is a sleeper agent for the Los Angeles Dodgers. No one can dispute me on this. They gave up quite literally nothing for both of those players. I know that they ended up leaving, but it's still pretty nuts that you got a year and a half of Trey Turner and Scherzer, basically in exchange for a -1 wins above replacement catcher. That's basically what happened. If you look up my guy Kybert Ruiz's numbers. But the other thing that has happened is I think that Farhan Zaidi was very clearly a sleeper agent for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And this one I think is almost nearly as indisputable. The only difference being that, why is it that you would want to give up a higher position with the Giants for a lower position with the Dodgers? But the fact of the matter remains that he ended up going to the Dodgers very shortly after this, hired after. And that's just very weird to me. And I felt like Farhan really, really missed on all the big moves. And also, I did not understand, just to go back for a second, why they trade Jorge Soler, evidently saying, okay, we're not going anywhere right now. D-backs are really good. Padres are really good. And of course, the Dodgers. And then the rest of the NL. And then you just don't trade Blake Snell, who then coincidentally signs with the Dodgers, Ben. Just coincidentally. So the truth is out there if you open up your third and fourth eyes, ladies and gentlemen. But no, in all seriousness, it was weird. And I don't understand why the Giants didn't do that, but they are here now. And I'm really curious to see what Buster Posey does, because this isn't, I think manager, like in the clubhouse, is what people would have expected, right? Because let's be honest, manager is a little bit more complicated. There's some people skills involved. We don't know. It's kind of impossible to measure the impact of a manager as opposed to the GM, especially in modern day baseball thinking. But have you heard any reason as to why it was general manager, why he's president of baseball operations, why it went to that path, and why it happened so suddenly that nobody knew about it? Do you have any kind of read into why that may be? Do they just want to make a splash to make fans excited? Because, I mean, it's one of the best players in franchise history.
Well, first of all, I can't continue without saying I disagree that Farhan Zaidi was a sleeper agent for the Dodgers. Like, I know there's people who actually believe that, and I don't know if you're truly one of them, but I 100% disagree with anything insane like that. So for the record, he didn't do a good job. People don't do a good job, and then he does have skills. They found some good undervalued talent along the way, and so the Dodgers recognized the skills that he has, and he was comfortable there, and they liked him there, and so they brought him back. So I don't think it's shocking that he went back there. And who wouldn't really want to work for that organization, right? In a way, right? Especially if you're comfortable there already. But as Posey is concerned, the number one thing I want to say is that he wanted this job is the primary reason. And when he was being introduced, okay, so let me give some backstory to those who don't know. And I think most of the baseball world wasn't really aware of what happened after he retired, which is that he and his family moved back to Georgia, where he's from. But within less than a year, they realized as a family that they considered the Bay Area home and that they didn't want to be in Georgia. They wanted to come back to the San Francisco Bay Area. And so they did. And then after that, so that was a big deal. It's like, because the assumption I had, you spoke about assumptions, and I agree. I would have thought maybe manager one day is kind of the path that he could be on. My assumption was that he would go to Georgia and we wouldn't really see from him much again. And he seems like that kind of guy who didn't want the spotlight, right? But I guess we were all wrong. He moves back to the Bay, and then he becomes he buys into the organization as a partial owner shortly after that. And then as part of that deal, he also got put on a very small board of directors, and that was several years ago. So he's been on the Giants board of directors and has been a partial owner for a few years now. And so he's in the room when they're talking about which players to acquire and what they're doing and the business side and just everything. And he's a smart guy. He's like valedictorian, I think, and he was going to be an architect or something. He's a very smart person and very thoughtful, and he also saw different he played through different eras. He played through like the kind of older school era of the early 2010s, and he played into like 2021 with Gabe Kapler and the modern hitting coaches and all that, and Farhan Zaidi. So he's like seen it all, done it all, and now he saw the ownership side, and he saw through that what the front office side looks like. And then they knew as a group that they were going to fire Farhan Zaidi, and part of those conversations were, well, who are we going to who's going to replace him, right? And
Right.
it Posey asked for the job, and from the people who were at most in charge, the principal owners, and they said when they introduced him, when Buster Posey asks for the ball, you give it to him, and that's how it happened. And it remains to be seen how it will all play out. I think a lot of people expect it to crash and burn because, I mean, I've read some stuff on Fangraphs where they said as much, but I don't know what to expect at all. And I'm just saying on my show all the time that we just have to look at each and every move and see and analyze it at the time, and then just see how it works out. And it's going to take a while to figure it all out, but it's very interesting. It's not boring. And also the fans did love it. So there's that too.
Yeah. And unlike some other sports, it does take a little bit longer for the fruits of your labor in baseball to be seen, right? This isn't like in the NFL where if a guy's a terrible coach, you're like, yeah, he was a terrible coach. Like we kind of like know it and whatnot a little bit sooner, I think. Even that could be disputed. But with baseball, it's like, well, we don't know. We're going to have to see how the farm system goes. That's what I'm most curious about. It's just like maybe he's got some other people that will help him in certain areas that he has less experience in. Maybe he's just a really great guy to have when you're interviewing star players and being like, well, who am I not to go and play for Buster Posey, one of the great catchers, not just of this generation, but all generations. So it is definitely something that remains to be seen. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, guys. And especially talk about the moves. We got to talk about what is going on with the NL West because there's been a lot of moves. And I think the Giants are my toughest team this year to get a read on. I have zero idea about this team. I never have any idea about this team, frankly. That's why Ben's laughing. But there's something about this team because I can't tell if too much went wrong for them last year and that we're kind of forgetting about certain players like Jung Ho Lee, for example. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But first, I need to talk to you guys about one of our sponsors for today's show, and that is our friends over at Select Quote, guys, because in sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics even. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage for up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you'd think. You get up to $1 million coverage for as little as $20 a month. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. One more time, selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote, they shop and you, as a result, save. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on segment number 2 of the Locked On Padres, Locked On Giants reunion special. I'm here with Ben Kaspick of Locked On Giants. You can follow him on Twitter at Ben Kaspick and me on Twitter/X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. Man, just got finished talking about just what the general, right? The over, just it's crazy that like the Giants really did have this insane move that I really don't think got talked about enough because frankly, that's because of the Dodgers. They've made a lot of moves. Roki Sasaki, Michael Conforto, our boy. I say our boy because I'm still convinced. I'm not out.
Now I'm convinced because the Dodgers wanted him.
Yeah,
Now I'm convinced.
I'm just
He's stunk for 2 years here, but now he's going to go hit 40 homers for the Dodgers.
Yeah, and it's like, and Ben knows this. This has been my guy for better or worse for years. I've been right on 2 players. It's him and we'll see about Victor Robles in Seattle for all of my Seattle fans out there. I'm just convinced I'll ride until I die with those guys. But a lot of moves from them with Roki Sasaki, with Blake Snell, with re-signing Teoscar Hernandez, all the different moves they made. Tanner Scott, a lot of controversy there. The D-backs making the biggest surprise, frankly, that I've seen in the offseason in a long time. I know that the Padres with Bogarts is pretty surprising too, but the D-backs, it was just like, what the heck? Where'd this come from with Corbin Burns? They get Randall Grichuk. They just extended Jordan Lawler the other day. Lots of crazy stuff going on right now in the NL West. But the Giants have made moves too, and so have the Padres. And I think that these two teams, this is what happens in baseball. Sometimes the flashiest moves don't necessarily guarantee you winning. In the case of the Giants, they've basically made two big moves. And for everybody who's worried about Mr. Buster Posey being the president of baseball operations, they did finally get a big time free agent. Is he the sexiest, craziest free agent in the world? Not necessarily, but Willy Adames, there are very few shortstops in the game that have hit as many home runs as him consecutively and produce as much wins above replacement as him consecutively over the past few seasons. And that is very exciting. And frankly, the combination of Willy Adames and Matt Chapman makes for possibly, I don't even know if debatably, the best corner infield defensively in baseball. Those two are magicians at the hot corners. And then they brought in Justin Verlander. But Ben, what is the general consensus right now, do you think, about the signings made for this team?
People were thrilled with when they signed Willy Adames because, like you said, it's not Shohei Ohtani, it's not Aaron Judge, it's not all some of the big names they've missed out on over the years. It's not quite at that level, but Willy Adames is a very, very good player and deserving of the $182 million contract that he got. And so people were very excited about that because that occurred early in the offseason. That was before the winter meetings. But I think what the general consensus is now is that because their only significant move since then has been the signing of Justin Verlander, who obviously is a Hall of Fame pitcher. No, first ballot for sure. When I said no, I'm saying no doubt first ballot Hall of Fame pitcher.
Yeah.
He is, however, 41. He's going to turn 42 in 3 days. So happy birthday in advance. But 42, and that's all they've done since, basically, and no significant trades to speak of. And so the general consensus is like they didn't do enough. Under Farhan Zaidi, it was kind of the opposite in that they made a lot of moves usually, but they didn't make that impact $182 million signing type move. So, I mean, they did. Jung-Hoo Lee was signed for over $100 million. And we like you referenced earlier, like he barely played last year and then he blew out his shoulder on a attempt at a home run robbery in center field. So it remains to be seen. He's still just 26 years old, maybe 27. But I just want to say, also, I think at this moment in time, Carlos Correa would be owed 11 more years or 12. It was a 13-year deal, and so that's a couple years. So it'd be 11 years and 300 million left ish. I would so much rather have the Willy Adames for 182 versus Correa for 300 ish. And so it ends up looking, MLB Network, for not that it matters much, but they did a top players list, top 100 players, and I just thought it was funny and appropriate. They had Willy Adames one spot better than Carlos Correa, and I think Correa's now, I don't know, Correa may even be older at this point now, even than Adames.
He's 29.
Correa is?
Yeah, no, he's 30 actually. Last year was his age 30.
Adames is 29. And so that's what I'm saying. Would you rather have 11 more years of, Correa is 30 and Adames is 29. So Adames is a full year younger, and Correa would be signed for another 11 years versus 7 for Adames. Anyway, 11 years, my gosh. So it sounded fun at the time, but with reality, I don't know. Like you said, I think that people could be sleeping on them because things did go south. They should have been better, it seemed, last year. But Yeah, that's the read.
Yeah.
Is that they didn't do enough, but people are happy with Adames and the Chapman extension too, which happened late in
Yes.
September.
Mhm.
That was a big deal as well.
Yeah, like and that counts. And I think that Chapman, people did not give enough credit, frankly to Boris too, but that Matt Chapman bet on himself and he's a great player. I've talked about on my show that like, is there a world in which you'd rather have Adames? I'm sorry, not Adames, Matt Chapman at his deal than Manny Machado at his deal? It's not a question of who's the better player. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the value. Carlos Correa at his best, I think, is a better player. Carlos Correa bet he had 4.3 wins above replacement in 86 games last year. Like he was on
Did
an
he? Oh my
absolute,
god.
yeah, he was going like he was actually doing
Oof.
the season that everyone thought he was always like going to do. So maybe he still got that in, but what is he? Really injury prone. And again, just to add on to the Adames thing, shortstops with 20 plus home runs and 70 plus RBIs in each of the last 4 seasons. Willy Adames, and that's it. So kind of a banner of consistency, and he's just gonna hit a lot of home runs. He's gonna play really good defense. That's what his thing is, and the
Energy
combination
too.
with
And this has
energy.
been
Yeah,
like a boring kind of flat Giants team for years. And to
Mhm.
have like a guy who brings a lot of Matt Chapman, I mean, he's not like a rah-rah guy, but he's he brought some intensity to the Giants that was missing for a while. So that's
Mhm.
another factor too.
Look, if you're gonna be crawling out from under the rubble, you take just pushing a couple of the boulders aside instead of trying to lift them all at once. Right? They got one move, and I do think that that means something. Because again, and again, I know that there's been like a lot. You are very well aware of a lot of the really just factually incorrect narratives about like people that want to go to San Francisco and all these things. It's scary and it's bad now, which is categorically untrue. They've been missing out on free agents for a long time, even before the Zaidi years. They have missed out. Roger Clemens, I believe, they missed out on at one point. Like this has been an issue with
Carlos
them.
Lee,
Carlos Lee, like they've missed out on free agents before, so it's just nice that they got to start. And maybe having Buster Posey is a
John
big part of
Lester.
that. Yeah, John Lester was another one. So I think it's a big move. The question is going to be the rest of the team. I think Jung Ho Lee is one of the reasons why I told you before that I can't get a read on this team. I'm not worried about some other players. Logan Webb will continue to be underrated. Robbie Ray, I think in a certain viewpoint, actually might be a pretty useful pitcher as long as you're not expecting the Blue Jays Cy Young, Robbie Ray. I think that he could be pretty helpful. So it's a start. But Jung Ho Lee is the reason I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, unless this guy is just a total bust, which I don't see, is he was showcasing a lot more power than people had expected prior to the beginning of the season, as some people from The Athletic, Grant Brisbee, wrote about. Like, it's interesting, to be sure. And then you have the Padres, who have had a litany of moves, weird moves, in some cases, desperate moves. They, this offseason, basically, the biggest moves they've made are Elias Diaz to be their backup catcher slash starting catcher. Nick Pivetta to be their 4th starter, which we talked about a lot on this show. Feel free to take go look at previous episodes for my thoughts on that, a move that I liked very much. Connor Joe, Jason Hayward, and then just the other day, actually right before we started recording, Yuli Gurriel will compete for a bench spot. Weird considering his history with you, Darvish, but nonetheless, it's been a weird offseason for the Padres. But I think that overall, I'm interested in what's going on with the NL West, man. There's just something in the air. Okay, the Dodgers are going to win the division. I understand, but there's something in the air right now, and I think that all teams except the Rockies, those poor Rockies, man.
Poor
I love
Rockies.
the Rockies though. Don't you need them though? You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
need a
yeah,
team
you
like
need
that.
them. You need
They're
them.
just having a good time out there. You know what I mean? Like they
They
still
really
are up
are.
there in attendance. They're like they have. I've joked about this before, but like certain substances have been made legal there for a long time. I think that the Coloradians, whatever you want to call them, um, they've moved past such primitive ideas as winning and losing. They're like, we're beyond that, y'all. You know what I mean? Go look up the attendance records. I'm not making this up. I don't know how they do it, but they foster a culture. We're going to take another quick break to hear from our sponsors. And then when we get back, I want to talk about what are the other things, what are the biggest questions with both of these teams heading into the season, and if we think they are contenders. But first, like I said, a few words from our sponsors. And just like that, everybody, we are back. Oh, yeah, we're right back here on the Locked On Padres and Locked On Giants reunion extravaganza special. Now talking about what is the big picture for both of these teams. Are the Giants contenders, Ben? And more importantly, what level of contender? You know what I mean? What is exactly do you think is the ceiling for this team? What is kind of your expectation of this team heading into 2025?
I've been doing this show a long time, Javi, and this is coming up on. I mean, I started prior to 2019, so however many seasons that is, 6 seasons. 7. This would be number 7. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. This is season number 7. Okay, so I've been making these predictions and stuff for a long time, and they have let me down too many times for me to feel like to just say like, oh, I'm feeling like they can outperform this and that, So they've been so mid for too long that it's got me jaded. And I was the one who couldn't be jaded, but now I'm jaded. So I don't have. It's not that I'm expecting them to be bad. I don't. That's the thing, is they haven't been bad at like any point really since many years ago. Like since 2018 was like the last time they were bad. 2017 they were truly bad. They lost 98 games. But since then it's been like 500-ish with 107 win season mixed in. And so expectation wise and how contenders, I think that they are like a 3rd tier contender. Like there's the top tier, like Dodgers, Braves,
Yankees, teams like that. Yeah.
Teams like that. And then there's the Padres and Diamondbacks and I don't know, like Cubs now maybe, and Brewers, and there's the Phillies and Mets, and they might be even in the top tier. And then there's the next tier below that. It's kind of a melee. Like when you look actually at some of the teams that are out there, there's a lot of possibilities. Like you look at the NL Central and like teams like the Brewers and teams like I'm loading it up just so I don't forget anybody. Like the Reds, they've had their moments and made the playoffs a couple years
ago. Matt McClain, man.
Yeah, and even honestly, like even the Nationals and the Pirates and not the Rockies, unfortunately, but I don't know. I'm just looking at FanGraphs projections, for example, and they've got the Giants at 80.4 wins. They won 80 games last year, so it's basically projecting them to be the same. But that being said, I think this is the one thing I'll say. I think they have more upside than they've had in a while because they've got a lot of young pitching that a lot of listeners of the Padres show, your show, have probably not heard of, but you saw some of last year, maybe like Hayden Birdsong, Landon Roop, and a bunch of other guys coming. And
such Giants names.
Yeah, I mean, but if you look at the stuff and like Hayden Birdsong was out here like striking out 12 guys, in the game, like he's got some electric stuff. He's a baby-faced kid, and so they've got some young pitching. And you look at their pitching staff, and that's kind of where I get a little iffy. Beyond Logan Webb, like you said, Robbie Ray, and maybe, and then Verlander, maybe, and then there's some young guys. Kyle Harrison, he's still a young player, but was a top prospect. So, and then Marco Luciano some of these young players are going to get a chance. Tyler Fitzgerald had a breakout season, and he's going to get another chance. Elliot Ramos had a breakout season last year. He's going to get another chance. And so I think that raises the ceiling a little bit if these guys, and then Jung-Hoo Lee coming back. So I can see how there's a path to being a lot better than people expect, but it would take a lot going right. It's not like they're just going to coast their way to the playoffs. No chance. But I want to know about the Padres too, because they've had such a weird offseason, in my opinion, because there was all this talk like they were going to have to shed payroll. And then right when the offseason ends, they're like, never mind, we don't. And then they start spending some money. What the heck is going on with that?
It really was like a never mind.
Never mind.
Like, even from like what I've heard, like even some people who are like a little bit more connected than me, they're like, yeah, Preller is doing his madman thing where he's just doesn't go to sleep and is just trying to conjure up moves and it figures something out. I was like, wait, yeah, I wanted Pavetta at the beginning of the offseason. That's like what I thought I wanted. And I think that most Padres fans are realistic. I think they were like, yeah, we know that we're not going out with the exception of Roki Sasaki. We're not getting a triple S tier free agent. Like we knew, no, we're not getting Juan Soto. We're not getting Alex Bregman. We're not getting Willy Adames. We're not getting players of that caliber, but some decent guy that could like fill in the back of your rotation who has thrown 142 innings for the past 4 years and he has a good strikeout rate. His stuff is pretty good. His sweeper is very, 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 very good. He just needs to figure out some things, and hopefully the Padres can get the best out of him, which they low key, by the way, have been doing past few years. Seth Lugo, Michael Wacha, Matt Waldron, even if it was only for a little bit. Blake Snell, Cy Young season, Dylan Cease improving a lot last year. Shout out Ruben Niebla, man. He's a magician. But yeah,
Michael King too, right?
Yeah, Michael King too. That's the other one. Michael King, great pitcher, fleeced those silly old Yankees. I'm glad that the Padres aren't now viewed as the team that lost Juan Soto. You know what I mean? Like they're like,
not at all.
Yeah, they're like, hey, we weren't going to be able to afford that, so we got Michael King and ostensibly Dylan Cease and a great season out of Kyle Higashioka as well. We'll see what happens with Brito and Vandy Vasquez, but yeah, I think that they are, like you said, in that tier 2, where top tier for me is like Phillies, Braves, Dodgers, Yankees. Maybe no one else in the American League. I'm trying to think. I think that like the Orioles are really great, but I don't think that they have shown me they want to actually try and win a championship, unfortunately. They've just been a little bit, they're very good. I mean, I think they're going to be like a 90-win team or so, but when you get into the playoffs, I'm not exactly scared of 42-year-old Charlie Morton as your number 2 starter. So we'll see what happens with that. But overall, I think they're in that tier 2. Every single year, this is just how sports are. There is going to be a team that made the playoffs that drops out. Just how it is. So that's why I think that it is important to know, hey, maybe the Giants do win 86 games. Maybe Jung Ho Lee's awesome. Maybe Tyler Fitzgerald's expected stats don't kick in. Like maybe stuff like that like pans out. Maybe, as I've said a lot on my show, we're overthinking the Padres lineup. They're just going to have a solid bunch of 3, maybe in some cases 4-win players, and Tatis will just enter his supernova that we've been waiting for a few years and carry the lineup. They'll have some good pitching. Maybe they're a little bit deeper than people realize. Totally possible. I just think that both of these teams, there is a question of depth. There is a question of like, there's so many things that need to go right. The Luciano thing I thought was an interesting point to bring up because it just has not gone well. I remember one of the first times we did a crossover. I remember at one point, I don't know if this was exact, but the top prospects for the Giants were Marco Luciano and Joey Bart. Let's throw back to Joey Bart, right? Like things have changed and both of those players have not turned out the way that they wanted, which is, again, part of the issue with prospects. Sometimes you got to be careful. Unless you're the Junior Caminero types, like these guys are not guaranteed to be even just decent players, right? Except unless you're a Junior Caminero, Jackson Merrill for the Padres, right? So I think both of these teams are in similar positions. Padres just a little more, so they just have more star power. They've got a little bit more in the tank. But the Giants are starting, and I'm just really curious what happens with some of the guys on this team. Like, yeah, why Verlander was such a random signing to me. I was like, okay, that's weird. You know what I mean? I was like, I thought he was going to go like ring chasing somewhere. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see how that goes. I think the rest of the NL is clearly a superior league to me right now. The American League. The American League, problem with the American League right now is that there are basically only 2 teams that try. 3 actually. Never mind. The Red Sox are back. The Red Sox care again, guys. They pulled the Padres. They're like, wait a minute. Hold on. We made how much money the last year? John Henry's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, go sign the trades for some guys. But the National League has so many teams that care and try. Dodgers, Diamondbacks. The Giants are making their ways there. The Cubs made a lot of moves. They got one of the best players in the sport in Kyle Tucker. You have the Braves, who I think might win like 103 games this year because it literally took their entire lineup underperforming, plus Ronald Acuna Jr. getting hurt, and they still made the playoffs. Oh, and by the way, Spencer Strider going down for the year. Like, I think that team's going to be a wrecking ball. And then you've also got the Mets and all the moves that they've made. Cincinnati, decent sleeper. Matt McClain could make a huge leap this year on top of Elliot De La Cruz. I know I'm just like rambling and whatnot, but I just think the NL is great.
There's a lot of good teams in this league, and not so much in the American League. And in the American League, I mean, yeah, you look at like
the Guardians
Central,
will be good. They'll be good, but they're not trying, and that's the problem.
even the West. I mean, the Astros have just decided we don't really care that much either. They're getting creative, but they're
getting creative.
They're not being aggressive, and their window is kind of closing.
Yeah, and granted, they did get something out of it, right? But
they
did at least get
they earned at least one of those rings.
Isaac Paredes is good. I will give him that. That was a good move. Isaac Paredes is really, really good.
They gave up Kyle Tucker though.
Yeah, they did give up Kyle Tucker, but I guess they had to. I guess they had to.
Did they? Did they have to?
No, you're right. They didn't have to. I guess you're right. I forgot if Kyle Tucker is a Boris client, is what I'm saying. Because if he's a Boris client, I'm like, that guy's getting paid like $325. You know what I mean? Like at minimum this next year. So we'll see what happens and whatnot. But Ben, I'm excited. We'll be doing many crossovers, I imagine, throughout the rest of the offseason. I really can't wait. And the reason is because every time baseball season comes around, I really think we've gotten some really cool change of scenery. I know everyone talks about Dodgers. I've talked about it on this show. I've had very unbiased Dodgers fans explain to me why it's great for baseball. I get it. But overall, I think that there really is a lot of movement in the sport right now and a lot of really exciting talent. So if you're just a fan of ball, just try to detach yourself from your team for a little bit and just be like, you know what? I want to see how this player does over there. I kind of want to see if the Cubs with Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga and Kyle Tucker, like they really got aggressive. Reminds me a little bit of the 2015 Padres, actually, when AJ Preller first took over and they just went full fantasy baseball with it. I think there's just a lot of storylines to follow this year. I don't know what the heck is going to happen with the Giants going forward, but as of right now, it's a start. I do think they deserve credit for the fact that Willy Adames is a top tier free agent, at least a top 6 or 7, from in my opinion, a really good class. And they have not gotten that in years. I don't even remember the last big free agent they got. I guess Blake Snell, but that one was weird because they got him late and it was a little bit of a mess. So we'll see how it goes down, man. But until then, if you have anything to plug for the good people out there, go ahead and do that.
You know I don't. Why you got to do me like that? I got nothing. Just follow me on Twitter. It's not even called Twitter, but follow me there at Ben Kaspick.
Follow Ben on their Twitter/X. You can also follow me at Javier, JAVIIPENO, Twitter/X and Blue Sky as well. Looking forward to it. For everybody, for my episodes, we're going to be doing a conversation with a special guest about Luis Ariz and what batting average actually contributes. That's right. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to get real nerdy and whatnot, talking about Luis Ariz, one of the most fascinating points of contention in all of baseball culture. So we'll talk about that and much, much more this week. But until next time, stay faithful. Stay safe and stay faithful, my Friar Faithful homies. And let's see what we got for Giant. I usually go with a G word, but let's just say stay scintillating, my San Francisco brethren. Yeah, not bad, right? Not gregarious this time, don't worry. But until next time, take care, everybody. We'll see you.